Hi everybody, Dave Blocks. I'm back with you here at the workbench at Beyond Guitars, and I have a very sad story to tell you. It's really only sad for me though. It's not sad for anyone else. And it's embarrassing because I wasn't sure I even wanted to tell you how this happened, but this is the banjo neck headstock I was mentioning in my last video that I needed to repair next. If you watched that all the way to the end, you saw this little headstock right here, and here's the problem. I've got a little story to tell you, and I didn't even know I had this story until I sat down one day, and there it was. Okay, so my set here for my videos is really just a workbench. In my, I've got two garages, and this is in my second garage. So behind my workbench, I've got my Deering stool here, which is part of the story. I've got my banjo, which I just like to pick up now and then and play, just for myself. And this is the setup. This is right where it was when this happened. Now, I got up out of my stool, and I had to reach for some glue, and I'm about to do it again. I've got my glues over here, so I'm kind of reaching around the side there awkwardly. And how on earth did I think that my Deering stool was under me? And I decide I'm going to sit down. And I sit down on an open space of air. What's behind me but my very own Gold Star. So I sat down right on the Gold Star, but it shoved the headstock into the glass of my guitar moi, and you can see this pane is missing. This pane is broken, so I broke my darn guitar moi, the headstock off my banjo, and as I was laying here on the floor, I thought, I hope that glass doesn't come down on my face, so I got up out of there pretty quick. Okay, well, I'm going to show you a picture here of this banjo with the headstock broken off, but it wasn't taken today. This was taken years ago. The banjo was actually being transported, and it got broken in the case by the delivery service. And when I finally got it back, I realized what had happened. The case was too short, and the headstock was hitting the end of the case, and if you dropped it on that end, it would just break it right off. Now, the interesting thing about this, I wanted to show you what's so prone to breaking and why it's going to be a good repair, is because of the angle of this break. So if you notice the way this has broken off, it's almost actually parallel with the side or the back of the neck. So, I mean, it's a very steep scarf angle there. And so the grain of this wood is actually just perfect for shearing off that headstock. But it also makes for a very wide, flat glue surface. Now you can see the black streaks in here, and I will explain what that is. That's actually the glue from the first repair, which held up just fine. And I used a very special luthier glue called JB Weld, the actual original JB Weld steel. I didn't want this coming apart, and it didn't. That glue is, in fact, the strongest glue I've ever used for anything. In automotive, I've fixed chainsaws with it. I have done some heavy repairs with that I will say that is the strongest glue on earth as far as I know. It's the strongest one I know about. What I really wanted was to make sure that I had a glue that wouldn't creep. And creeping is something that happens to some glues when they're under constant strain. And I wanted to hang this banjo on a hook, the way I have them on the guitar moi behind me, hanging there all the time. And I thought, well, that's certainly prone to creep. So I wanted to use one that I knew would never move at all. But some glues actually do move very slowly, and over a period of months to years, they can reposition the part. So anyway, this repair will go well, but the face of the overlay here is all broken away. Now I have some of the pieces of this, and here are two directions I can go in repairing this, where this is all missing. So what I'm going to do first is take the neck off the banjo, and then we can handle this a lot more easily. So one thing that you can really tell if you've got a gold star or not is this inlay block will have written on it the style of the inlay. And on this banjo, it's a wreath style. There are 3 styles Gold Star used and continues to use. That is the wreath inlay style. You see right here, there's hearts and flowers, and also the flying eagle, also known as the splattered frog. But that's actually one of my favorites, but I really like that inlay. Now this banjo ended up my banjo instead of one that I was going to sell because it needed so much work with the headstock broken off and everything. I just thought instead of trying to explain all the repairs I've had to do to it, I like the sound of it so much, I'm just going to keep it for myself. So I have been playing this for years, actually, and really enjoyed it. But no problem until I sat on it. So we're going to get this show on the road here. So now I have the neck off the banjo pot, and you can see here where it hit the edge of the glass. Pretty big gash in it right there, and the headstock snapped right off. So should I save the neck? Yeah, I think I should save the neck. It's expensive to have another neck made, and I can fix this one just fine. What's really kind of the question, though, is how to repair the headstock overlay. And if you look at it here, I've still got some of the pieces of the overlay that will fit like this and like this, and I may have to fill in some more here and there in little spots. Like here, there's a little piece missing, so I'm not sure, I don't know where that went, but I'm gonna have to figure that out. I think I can make this look pretty decent, but I thought this may be an opportunity for me too to do something kind of goofy. I was thinking about actually putting a Gibson Les Paul guitar inlay, headstock inlay on this banjo. There's never been a banjo with a Les Paul guitar inlay on it, and I thought that might be something fun to do. So as long as this looks like a Gibson anyway, I had no intention of making this banjo look like a Gibson, except the first time the headstock broke, the overlay shattered and I couldn't repair it. So I found this in my drawer. I had bought it years previously, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to slap that on there, and then maybe someone will think it's a Gibson, and I'll say, haha, no, it's not. It's a Gold Star. It was just for fun, and actually out of convenience because I had this. But here we are, the second headstock break-off for this banjo, and now what are we going to do? What I do need to do is glue the headstock back on. So I'm going to get to this right now. So I've got a whole bunch of different glues, and I don't have them all here. In fact, I've got some epoxy here, and I have some JB Weld in my toolbox. I'm not going to pull it out, but JB Weld is what I used on this before. And JB Weld is an epoxy-based glue, and what I like about epoxy base is it doesn't creep and it will fill voids. It's just a very good, very strong, very, very strong glue. So I wanted that because I hang my instruments by their headstock often on a hook, on the wall. So that's something I want to avoid tight bond for that, because any PVA glue that is white glue or yellow wood glue, which are great glues, if they're under constant stress all the time, the glue has a tendency to do what's called creep. So I don't want creepy glue. I know people are going to tell me, tight bond works for me. Works for me every time. But here's my turning point, right? So CA glue. CA glue would probably do pretty well. However, it's hard to use because it's kind of a big area here, and I need to position it just right on the end and adjust it. I need a little bit of open time. So that means that the glue doesn't set up instantly. It gives you a little time to work with it. You clamp it and set it. And when you're ready to leave it, you just leave it. And that's also a problem with hide glue. It has a short open time. It also can be attacked by microorganisms. That is, it can decay, and it can also crystallize and become fragile and shrink. So hide glue's out for me. That's not something I want to use. And JB Weld is what I settled on. The first time, you can actually see a little bit of the JB Weld peeking through here, but it certainly held up well. But being an epoxy base, JB Weld, I'm going to use regular epoxy, which is often used in instrument repair anyway, but that's my choice on this. Epoxy, one thing epoxy doesn't like is to be clamped real hard. So if you have a piece that doesn't fit very well when you put it back together and there's a little bit of space in there, epoxy is a great choice because it'll fill the voids, and it's actually stronger if you leave it a little bit thicker. So I like putting some paper down because this stuff is easy to get all over the place. So just pierce each tube. The idea here being that you're going to use equal parts of each one. So I'll just go ahead and squeeze out. This is available in larger containers. I like the small ones because I usually have only a small amount that I need to use, and then I can not have to risk ruining the whole container, because once you open these, they're not the best. They tend to either leak or kind of dry out. So I just judge. Speaking of dry out, that's exactly what this one has done. Okay, so this is kind of where everything fell apart in a sense because I didn't have any good epoxy. I looked around, I found some other old epoxy, was not good anymore, so I had to stop everything and run down to the store, get some epoxy, come back and set everything up, and then I somehow missed the mixing. But anyway, 2 parts of epoxy and you stir it together, and then I want to make sure my joint goes together clean, and you can see I've got epoxy on both surfaces as they glisten in the light. Well, at this stage, I have to keep working to get this together because the epoxy does set up, but it does give me plenty of time to get it done. I just can't languish. I need to keep at it and get it fitted correctly. On this particular one, I found that they tended to not want to slide together all the way. So I would position them the best I could and then squeeze them together and take off that squeeze out glue as quickly as I can. Because I do not have a lot of time and I don't want that to set up on the surface. Cured epoxy is very hard, so it's difficult to get out. A little bit of wiggling is good because that helps work some of the air bubbles out. And then I've got a spring clamp. It's not a super strong clamp, but it's enough to squeeze out a substantial amount of the excess glue and get those pieces together the way they should be. The fit is so nice actually that it has some inherent strength. It doesn't want to just fall apart. As you can see, it's not clamped and it's not falling apart. So I can still see a little bit of the joint here. So I'm moving it over slightly and pulling it down. And I found too that this a little tap was not a bad idea to get this all the way together right here. Now epoxy makes actually a wonderful grain filler. It's just a little harder to work with than the traditional stuff. Now your fingers, I've got gloves on, but your fingers are extremely sensitive to different heights. Like you can feel where a joint is a little bit misaligned better than you can see it. Now I'm seeing a little bit of a gap there, so I'm going to try and coerce it down. There, that's really good. I like that. Now, as I say, epoxy actually does better if you can avoid clamping it. Clamping it is good to keep it in position, but the glue, epoxy, doesn't rely on clamping like regular Titebond does. Titebond, you really need to mash them together. Now, as long as this stuff is still pliable, I'm going to try and pull it out of here because I don't want it in there. A little bit of sanding, a little bit of filling. This will be 100% invisible and 100% full strength. The clamp can actually dislodge things, especially if they're at a slant. So it aligns better without a clamp. And that's what's the most important to me, is the alignment. So I'm going to call that good, let it set. Okay, so we're about an hour later and this glue is now set. Not set to maximum strength, that'll come in 1 or 2 days, but it's set to all modest strength levels. So I can work with it now. So the joint looks good. I'm happy with that. It's perfect as far as I can expect at this point. So now I'm going to move on to working on the overlay repair. And as I say, I may just abandon the overlay repair at some point and go with a different idea. But we're going to give it our best here. So you can see the whole lower part of this broke out, and that's because it broke at this angle and then it broke right in the middle of the overlay. So if it had broken back here, it'd be different, but it broke basically right across here. So it threw everything out and broke the whole bottom part of it away. So now it fits nice and tight, and that's where I want it, right there. So that'll look pretty good. I'm going to glue that in place right there. This was actually, I did a little bit of work off camera. I just glued these two little pieces together, and so that will go on as one piece now, and that seems to fit okay without cutting away any more material. So it's not too bad. I mean, I've got this area over here that's missing wood. I did find a tiny little piece of ebony, and I'm not sure where that goes. This is kind of a little mystery here, puzzle piece. Aha, I think it goes like that. So that may help a little bit. I'll glue this all in, and for this, I could use any number of glues. Now, hide glue tends to shrink a little bit as it hardens, as it dries, and because it shrinks, it can actually pull things together a little bit. There's no reason really not to use it, and I like it because it's so tacky. It holds things in place really well. All right, so you can see I've got it sanded down. Well, I got all the pieces in there, and there are still some voids, and I wanted to sand it perfectly flat, but that's just the perfectionist in me. Some things I'm a perfectionist about, and other things I really am not. I'm not the neatest person in the world, so hey, it's all relative. When I'm working on something, I like to get it perfect. And, it's not a completely flat headstock, and that's just the way it is. You can see it's a little low in the middle where it's still very black. The sanding didn't really hit there, so that's all right. But what I don't want to see is the cracks, the splits, where the pieces came together and there are some little low spots. So I'm filling in with the dust I just created and catching it wherever I can. I'm trying to dig it out of there because there's some collected in there. It's all over my hands, so I'm going to just try and get... I only need a tiny, tiny bit, so just a little bit of ebony dust in that little crack there. And then the ultra thin CA glue will be the best product to seep in there and cement those dust particles together. And so I'll do this whole same process, looking for a little bit more dust on the other cracks. How about the little pad that's underneath my work area? Scrape some up there and get it off and into the little crack joints. And I was actually pretty amazed at how well that works. It's just remarkable. The ebony is a nice material to work with. It's not absolutely jet black, and I actually do end up staining it a little bit. But this process worked very, very well. Better than I had expected. And I get accused of using too much accelerator on my super glues. And that may be the case, but half the time when I spray it on there, it creates kind of a bubble or a blister of super glue, and it hardens only on the outside. And so I just kind of give it a good healthy dose. Got a couple of different kinds of accelerator, and the one that's made by Titebond seems to work a little faster or a little more thoroughly than the one by Glue Boost. But the Glue Boost one doesn't blush, and sometimes the Titebond brand will cause the super glue to turn white. So, one thing or another, there are always choices and more than one way to get it done. But here I'm just trying to get that glue flat again, so kind of working with that. You've seen this if you've seen my other projects, how I use the scraper to flatten things out and get them smooth, and the files too, to get the high spots down, and then sandpaper to smooth things out. I don't want to sand it too much though, so that low spot there near the logo, this is going to stay low. I don't want to sand it too much because I can go through the inlays and then it's game over. I would have to just abandon that because that wouldn't be repairable. So after the dust and the pure clear super glue to fill in the voids between the broken pieces, I'm using now a product that is going on black. It is a black super glue. I got that from StuMac. I could basically make the same thing with Glue Boost, but this is a really nice jet black, and it's already prepared, so some convenience in there over the Glue Boost. You can see that little hairline there I'm trying to trace with the black super glue. And I was actually amazed at how well this worked. I did have to go over it a couple times to get it to where it really didn't do any more good. So I used that procedure to its maximum benefit by repeating it probably 2 or 3 times. And the end result, well, I'll have to show you. Okay, so at this point, I've got it pretty well together, as you can see. So basically the plan was to piece in all the little chunks that I had. And I've got 2 pieces here. No, I got 1 piece here and 2 pieces here. I can still see this little crack. I'm not sure I can hide that, but the truss rod cover will go over that and make it look pretty good so you won't see it. Now, I do have a little bit of a worn spot right here, and so I'm taking the black super glue and putting it right along that area to try and build it up a little bit. This old banjo's had 2 broken headstocks, and it's on its second overlay, And this overlay has now been broken into many pieces, but now it's looking pretty nice. And I'll get some finish on that and it will look pretty darn good, I think. So I guess it's a keeper. Well, that's going to do it for today. We're only partly along, you know. I have that big gash in the back of the neck, and then I've got refinish for a portion of it. So it's really a finish repair on this job, and it really will go fast. So one more video and we'll be through this neck, and I think you'll be pretty amazed at how that shattered headstock ends up looking. So be sure to join me, like and subscribe, and I appreciate everybody who's subscribed, and click on that bell. And we are set to go for another video here coming up real soon at Beyond Guitars.